Tottenham Hotspur had a pretty decent season, finishing 5th, which is definitely progress compared to last season back in Europe, and they can build on that in the transfer window. The big question is, will Ange be backed? It appears he might be backed, with maybe 3 or 4 key signings coming in, and reportedly, because of Tottenham's good financial situation compared to other Premier League clubs, they may be making deals early. So in today's video, we're going to have Sonny over on the channel, and both me and Sonny are going to go through the latest Tottenham transfer news, the targets for each sort of position, and then take our picks over who we think will be best for Spurs, with a potential 11 at the end. But first of all, let me introduce Sonny. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I feel like I'm part of the Johan Lang, Fabio Paratici, Daniel Levy board of picking the transfers. I wish I was, because it's hard to know what's going to happen this summer, but it's exciting times at Spurs, I would still say.
Yeah, I think Spurs are on a better track than I think some fans realise. I think 5th place in Europe, decent financial situation. It just depends on what Levy and co are going to do, how much money they're going to spend.
That's the thing. I mean, it's all well and good. Like every so often in my comment section, I reply saying, if Levy backs Ange, it'll all work out. But we've said this year after year, 20 plus years of Levy tenureship. But this is the time to do it. This is the manager to back, in my opinion. We've seen some good successful transfers already in the shape of Vicario, Van der Ven, who, clocks as the fastest Premier League player of all time. Even Maddison, I think, is going to come better, and even some good youngsters, Ashley Phillips, that we've secured, who's gone out on loan this season. I think we've got a good future at Spurs. We've got a good setup going into it. I think Johan Lang, as I mentioned, is a good scout. Fabio Paratici is still on the books in some regard. I don't know how much, just as an advisor, I believe, but really getting the likes of Sarr in, the likes of Destiny Udogie. So hopefully, with our new stat-based sort of scouting network, we can, gone are the days of paying over the odds for an Ndombele or a Jed Spence, who just aren't going to work.
Yeah, you've been really looking into data a lot lately, and I think Lucas Berg will be a really smart signing. I think that obviously Udogie's been smart, and Spurs' business has definitely gone up. And one thing about Spurs is they've got a little bit of an advantage with FFP. There's teams like Forest, there's teams like Chelsea that will need to sell quick because they need to balance their PSR, and Tottenham could take advantage of teams selling potentially early in the window. They can make deals a lot quicker than other teams. My question to you is, first of all, do you think Tottenham are going to act quick? And who would you sign? Would you go for a Gibbs-White, go for a Gallagher? And second of all, there's obviously rumours of, bigger players like Basuma and Richarlison leaving, and Postecoglou's 3 priority signings being sort of a centre-back, a striker and a midfielder. And would you agree with those priorities?
Yeah, I mean, the priorities have been known for a while now. I mean, even towards the end of the season, from watching Spurs, you can say the midfield makeup is looking a bit all over the shop and is not helping the defence. But, it's those extra positions, I think, that are key as well. Like, we all think of some sort of forward. We all think some sort of 6. Basuma has just fallen off a little bit. When it comes to being quick, though, I mean, it's quite interesting with the Euros on the horizon, because that does sort of throw a bit of a spanner in the works, because, a lot of these players are around doing, international duty. But, in recent times, Spurs are a bit of the deadline day specialist. But, even under Conte, we had a lot of our business wrapped up very, very early, which is sort of the way we seem to be operating, which I find better. It means they can, bed into the squad. Postecoglou can show his style of football and implement what he wants. And I think with these signings, I think versatility, and we're probably going to get onto this, versatility is key. We've seen the likes of Mickey van der Ven playing left back, Emerson Royal not being able to play across the whole back line, midfielders playing in different positions. I think even against Sheffield United, Kulusevski playing in the 9 role. So it is pretty much like Johan Cruyff total football. All these players have got to play in a multitude of positions. As I say, yeah, winger, forward are important, but I think we saw this season there were certain areas where we have strengthened at the back. Dragsson has come in, which was a really good signing. As you mentioned there, PSR, we're quite good, and FFP. We were one of the only clubs to really spend in January, spending about 26 million, I think it was, which was, doesn't sound like a lot, but in this modern world of operating, it was quite a lot in the January transfer window. But as I said, with injuries, our fullbacks, Poro looked a doubt, but he was okay after he pulled up a bit, I believe, in the Newcastle game. But then we lost Destiny Udogie. It took a couple of fixtures to realise that Ben Davies wasn't going to work. Then Emerson wasn't going to work. Mickey van der Ven is all right at left back, but you feel like you get the best out of him from centre back. So you do need a sort of versatile option. I think the big question in the Tottenham fan base at the moment is, a lot of clubs, say like Arsenal, say like City, the big dogs, they don't buy 4, 5, 6 signings anymore. They buy 2, 3 that are, worldies, you could say. Whereas Tottenham are sort of every summer we're expecting loads of signings. Whereas I think what we want to see is we want to see some marquee signings, but then the likes of a Lucas Bergwijn come in, or an Antonio Nusa who was linked, players with potential, but a player that's not going to come in and be like, go out on 15 loan spells and then, maybe turn a profit. We want to see some sort of reward and return on these players now, especially with, the youth of this squad. It had to be, we had to get rid of a lot of the deadwood. We've done a lot already, the likes of Dyer, Lloris, and our average age has dropped a lot. But there are still a few names that we need to shift this summer. Hopefully the likes of Joe Rodon, definitely get him to Leeds if they get promoted. That's a guarantee. There's a lot of money in that Tottenham squad to be had. The likes of Højbjerg might return a nice fee. Lascelles. So there's no point. Like, I feel like moments this season, and I am one of these Tottenham fans, have gone like, Højbjerg has a good half a game, and we're like, should we just keep him? It's like, no, sometimes we've got to cut the ties and realise that we need to build a squad that's going to compete with the very best.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think Tottenham need to get quality signings over quantity, the right kind of signings. They might want to tick 3 boxes off and then maybe go for a full signing that's a little bit more low-key. I think, in my opinion, Tottenham probably need full signings, someone that's versatile in defence that could play full-back and centre-back and provide cover there. Both full-backs, both sides of full-back, centre-back, one of those players that could play centre-back, both sides full-back. I think they need a DM that's probably ready to play now. I think they need a striker, and I do think they need a winger, despite sort of striker looking like priority. Now, I'm going to quickly break through some of the transfer news on Tottenham that's come out today. I've sort of graded the sources of what I believe is more reliable or less reliable. So I'm going to quickly get through this news, and then me and Sonny are going to get into our options for each position. So on Gimenez, it's said that Tottenham are considering a move, and there's other reports coming out that are less reliable, saying Tottenham are going to make a move for him soon and he's the top striker target, but he definitely is a target. Omar Manouche has been linked to Tottenham quite a bit by German sources. I mean, it's decent sources in Germany, but again, nothing concrete yet. And then Solanke, Gimenez, Toney, Girassi, Openda, I've said that wrong, Gyökeres are all under consideration for Tottenham's number 9 position, according to Paul O'Keefe, who's a pretty credible journalist. And they've also been linked to other players like Suzuki, but I'm not too familiar with the outlets. And out of all these sort of options, I asked Sonny who he would pick, and I'd like you to break down your options, and I'll break down mine.
I mean, yeah, the striker market is weird at the moment. We've seen, a top striker now is going to cost a pretty penny. But the reason I've gone with Ivan Toney is I feel like, I'm the sort of people who don't know me. I like to, I balance up all my arguments because I know the negatives of Toney. He has gone on like a 12-game no scoring run, and I think the last goal might have been against Spurs. Funny enough, he came back and scored 2, and then he hasn't scored since. But he's 28. He's in the prime of his career. I think this Brentford side has struggled this season in general. Their league position doesn't lie. And I don't think that's just because Toney hasn't been in the team. I think, they've had injury. Visser and Buemo haven't really been as performing as they would be. Ethan Pinnock at the back has been a massive loss to them. But as I say, I think he's Premier League proven. He's English, which, a lot of these signings that we're going to mention in this video, Tottenham are really struggling for that homegrown quota. So an English striker does work. And I think the fee is quite respectable. You look at 35 to 45 million, which compared to Gimenez as well, which is similar. I know he's younger, but we know at this level he can compete. And the thing is, what I find quite interesting is he's a bit similar to Harry Kane, as we say there, able to drop deep, pick up the ball, which I think is vital. And even this season, Tottenham, I think it's their second best goal scoring campaign in a Premier League season. And that's without Harry Kane. So the amount of chances this season I've watched Spurs where maybe Timo Werner's been on the end, maybe Brennan Johnson's been on the end, maybe a Maddison who haven't been able to, they're good finishers, but they're not, a proven striker. Whereas I think you put Toney on the end of this, it's great. I think he would link up amazingly with Maddison, with Son, and penalties, corners. I mean, corners we are lacking so much in an attacking sense. I know everyone's been joking about us defensively, but having him in the box would be amazing. And just, I think this one makes a bit of sense as well. I said about the fee, but I think the likes of with this striker market at the moment, it's the same thing. It's us, Arsenal, and Chelsea competing for the similar names. And I think those two are sort of a bit wary of Toney. So I think Postecoglou. And the thing is with Toney, a lot of people are saying like, oh, if he came to Spurs, maybe he's due one big move. I think this is his move to, get a team maybe to the next level. He's not going to be playing for Real Madrid. I know he jokes about that, but it is between the likes of where does he see the best project? Is it Arsenal? Is it Chelsea? Or is it Spurs? And I think, why not give Spurs a chance? I think he'd be really good.
Yeah, no, I agree. My picks were obviously Gimenez and Toney, more so because I thought it was the most realistic, but I also thought they were probably the two best options in my opinion. I think Solanke is also a very good option, Premier League, proven, homegrown, as you said. And I think with Ivan Toney, the betting situation, him not scoring as many goals this season might make his price go into that sort of reasonable fee. Whereas I think if it's looking at the 50 million mark, I think that Tottenham will walk away from that 28, not the best season. But there's been rumours of him being able to go for 40 million, potentially 35 million. And if that is the case, I think Premier League proven, can drop deeper, do elements of what Kane can do. We know there's a good player there, even though he's dropped off a bit this season, and they've got someone English that's ready now. Because I think Tottenham are quite a young squad, and while like a lot of the players I suggest Tottenham buy are young, they also will want players that are in their prime to balance out the youth and the prime. But the other option I did look at is Gimenez. Obviously, Eredivisie players, so stats are often inflated, but 26 goals this season, 8 assists, can't be ignored. He looks very good in a transition. He looks like he's able to hold up the ball, link play well. I think Tottenham needs someone that's a clinical finisher, which you get in both sort of Gimenez and Ivan Toney, but also a player that is able to help sort of drop deeper and hold the ball and link up the ball and keep the ball well. Because you've got Son, who had that good relationship with Kane, and obviously Kane would often play in Son and stuff, and you need a striker, I think, to be able to do that. And I believe that Gimenez can be moulded more into that player and has potential to do that. Ange can improve young players, and I think when he's being quoted at £35 million, he could be a good option. But as you said, I think a lot of the striker market will depend on what Arsenal do, what Chelsea do. I mean, my first pick for Tottenham, and we'll get onto him at the end of the video, would have probably been Benjamin Sesko. His release cost was £42 million, which I thought would have been a steal for you guys, perfect strike for you guys. I think it's gone up. He looks Arsenal bound. Gimenez has been linked to Chelsea. That may put Tottenham in the perfect position for Ivan Toney as well. But I wanted to now dive into the midfielders, okay? Now, I'm not sure what Tottenham are going to do, because I think they need a number 6, but they have been linked to a Gibbs-White. They have been linked to an Eze who's a bit more advanced. And I think while, they're fantastic players, I've sort of had this stance of, I think you need to just put everything into a 6, because you've got Bergvall, who's more of an advanced midfielder who I think could be really good, and I think he could work in a potentially come through the season. You've got Maddison, who's dropped off a bit, but it's good. I think Kulu could play central. Lo Celso shows at times. Sarr shows at times what he can do. And sort of the names Chelsea have been linked to the most are Gallagher, Ederson, which I think is looking less realistic now, according to sort of credible reports saying that Atalanta only want to sell Coop miners, Gibbs-White, Onana and Gray. And it's not the most choice. And I am going to ask you actually who you'd sign that wasn't on this list. And then we're going to dive into who we've both picked on this list for Tottenham to sign.
I just think, the midfield market's weird. And you list all the players there when you think of, like, we have got some good midfielders, but I don't think Ange has worked out what his best midfield is. On paper, at the beginning of the season, you would have said Basuma, Bentancur and Maddison, but then Sarr came in and has really torn it up. So he's probably a starter now. And, the thing is with all these midfielders, they're all pretty random. Like, they're not all the same sort of profile. People that know me, I've not been wanting the Gallagher signing at all since we were linked last summer. And I just don't rate him that much. Like, yes, he's a workhorse, but I don't think he's going to offer us what we really need.
Yeah, you've already got that.
Yeah, I feel like we've just got that in abundance. And when it comes to Morgan Gibbs-White, I like, but it seems like we're going for the wrong double-barreled surname at Nottingham Forest. This guy can play on the wing as well, which would be really interesting. But and maybe you can answer this as well, Alice. But like, it's hard to know the makeup of a midfield. Does Maddison work well with a Morgan Gibbs-White? I mean, we saw more recently that even Maddison played on the wing against Sheffield United, so maybe there is that option that one of them will play more on the wing. I like Onana. I think, he's out of favour at Everton because I don't think he's an Everton player. I think he
Yeah, I
is
agree.
more suited to I think that move came about and I think a few teams did miss out. And Sean Dyche, when he wants a no-nonsense midfielder, like, someone who's just going to, if we can swap Højbjerg for him, then I think, both teams would
Yeah.
be very, very happy. But midfield's tricky. I feel like, we're the way that a midfielder, especially a 6, is at the moment, the likes of Caicedo, Rice, Rodri, you're looking at hundreds of million
Yeah, it's
pounds. But
crazy.
these players are probably in the 50 million mark, so it's hard to really know. Like a lot of these names, I'm for, I'd say Gibbs-White, but then again, if and this is me maybe contradicting what I said earlier, I'd sign Gibbs-White and Onana. Maybe that is your winger instead, or and then if you could get a striker as well, I think that's a good option. Obviously, Gibbs-White's good for the homegrown quota. We got to keep thinking about that, but it just sends me in a bit of a whirlwind. I mean, again, when you were talking about the strikers as well, like Solanke, fee's gone up. The fact that Nottingham Forest have stayed up means Gibbs-White's fee stays quite solid. The likes of we got James Maddison on a good deal last year because Leicester got relegated. So it is a bit of a tricky situation. But I just think Andre Onana would be my option. Morgan Gibbs-White, if it depends who we shift. It depends if we really overhaul this midfield, then why not try and sign both?
Yeah, I think your budget depends a lot on sales, and we'll get into at the end are sort of realistic and less realistic potential 11s. And I think I agree with you with Amadou Onana. My picks was Archie Gray of Leeds and Amadou Onana. I think Amadou Onana, out of the players linked, is definitely more ready. You can see his statistics there. 94% off for aerials won. Tottenham need to be a lot better in the air. I think his ability to cover ground would suit Tottenham really well. He's 6'4", he's leggy, and Tottenham leaves so many open spaces in transition. He's sort of got the legs to clean that up as well. He looks decent at winning back the ball, and then that means Tottenham could move the ball quicker because Ange does like pacey players to transition. I do think Amadou Onana, all those options would be my first pick. £50 million for a player that's a little bit inconsistent and not completely rated at Everton is the big question mark. Sometimes I watch Amadou Onana, I think he's brilliant, and I take him at Manchester United. And other times I watch him and I'm not convinced. But I think, as you mentioned, he's not an Everton player, which is maybe where those inconsistencies come from. When I did a video on who I'd sign for Tottenham about 2 months ago, I put Mats Wiefer down as the name just because he was a little bit more tidy in possession, and I think he was quoted at £35 million. But he's not really been linked to Tottenham. He's been linked more to Barcelona and clubs outside the Premier League. Now recently Liverpool because of Arne Slot. So going off the list, my option would have been Gray and Amadou Onana. I sort of agree with you on Amadou Onana, but I do really like the look of Archie Gray. Not watched a lot of him, not watched a lot of Leeds, but I think Adam Wharton going to Crystal Palace from the Championship been really good for Crystal Palace. Glasner's team is doing well, but why I mentioned Archie Gray as a possible is because he's a little bit like a mini Kimmich in the sense of he's been playing right back a lot and inverting, so he can offer cover there at right back. He can also offer DM. I think Tottenham needs someone that's ready at DM now because Basuma's been a bit hit and miss, and I think that's why I'd probably push Amadou Onana over him. But I think he's 6 foot, he's defensively solid, but he really reminds me of Kimmich. So good on the ball, takes care of the ball so well, defensively solid. He seems to be able to get the ball and dribble out tight scenarios, sort of break lines with his passing, very, very modern, technical kind of player. And I think he could be evolved into a Kimmich, 18 years of age as well. So I think for me, if Tottenham could get both Archie Gray and then an Amadou Onana, Wiefer type profile, will go out and find some kind of DM gem, because I think sometimes there's players that we don't think of that Tottenham will sign, and you look at that player and statistics think that's a great DM gem that they haven't been linked to yet. I think that would be great for them. And I think midfielders and sort of attackers is what Tottenham have been linked to the most. But I'm now going to ask you about sort of defence, because realistically, I think Tottenham will maybe sign one defender that can play centre-back and full-back cover, because I think your back four of Doggy, Porro, Van de Ven, Romero's good. I actually think Dragusin is a good backup, even though he's not been used loads. But I think you need someone that's very versatile, like a Urian Timber, what Urian Timber was signed to do at Arsenal. And obviously, I'd like you to sort of talk about what you think you do and your sort of options here.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much took the words out of my mouth. I was going to compare him to Timber in what I was saying earlier, like that versatile player who can play in a multitude of positions. Gertrude, I think, is really good. And what's quite interesting is you mentioned, we mentioned Gimenez as well, both Feyenoord. They were both at the North London Derby, which was slightly reported, but not really en masse. But I don't
Mm.
know if they were put off after that result because there's not been much been said since. So I think that Gertrude's good. I think if we can get a good fee for him, I think that makes a lot of sense. As I said, versatile, centre back, right back, left back. We've also got Luka Vuskovic, who is due to join us. We signed him from, I've forgotten who it is, Hajduk Split, but he's currently on loan at Legia Warsaw, I believe. Still very young. I don't think he's eight. I think he joins us when he's 18. But we signed him last year when he was 16. So he's still got one for the future, and he is massive. He is going to hopefully add some more aerial threat. But another name that's sort of been banding around that I think is a good option, and I believe he could be available on a free, is Kene Tete. I feel like quite underrated at Fulham. A lot of people would say Anthony Robertson, but I think that's a bit much of that's a harder player to get out of Craven Cottage. But Kenny Tete, I think, Premier League proven, still like a more mature player, stays in London. You got to think about these things. Can play
Yeah.
right and left back. So just a bit of a stopgap, maybe,
Yeah.
but more of a stopgap that, like, if we are getting rid of the likes of Ben Davis, Emerson, we do need to sort of have someone who can play at this level. I think Archie Gray is a good option for like that you mentioned, but it's just knowing it's like I keep playing like this thing in my head of what I said earlier of do we want to sign, players ready now, one to the future, 3 players or 6. So it does make me think which ones are better options. But then again, Kene Tete could be seen as, not good enough. Maybe, we don't want to do stopgaps anymore. We want to have a player who either Ange can grow or because the thing is, the way you see it is Destiny Adogi and Pedro Porro are going to start most of the 90% of the games when fit.
Yeah.
Maybe like some cup competitions they don't, or some games in the Europa League. But we do need that squad. Our squad has been absolutely, obliterated with injury this year. So we need to, with the distance we cover, and as you say, the tracking back you mentioned with Onana, we do need some physically fit players who are going to put up a lot of minutes.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think if Tete's available on a free, it's one of those maybe why not go for it. I think you were linked to Tosin, but I think he's going to Newcastle now, and he could have been a decent option when you sort of have your back line sorted, but you've got no depth to it. So it's like you want to sign someone that's happy being second fiddle, but they've got to be good enough and potentially versatile, because I don't think there's too much point getting a left back and getting a centre back. But if you could get someone that could play left back and play centre back and also play at right back or is comfortable all round, it really helps out. And I sort of agreed with you with Gertrude. I think his versatility, young, £25 million. I think he's captain and he's got that good mentality as well. Could be a really good option if he doesn't go to Liverpool. But I also had a look at Calafiori, very young, just turned 22 in Serie A, having a good season, able to play left centre back, able to play left back. I think if you do go for centre back depth, it's probably that left hand side behind Van der Ven, because Dragason's more of a right sided centre back. And then he could potentially give depth to a Doggy. I don't know what he'd be like playing on the right hand side as a right back if he needed to fill in there. That would be the question mark. So maybe Gertrude, because he can play centre back, right back, left back, could be more suited to that, particularly if they're going to be in that similar fee and he's got that maybe year or so experience on him. But I do think if Tottenham sign a versatile sort of defender that could play right back, that could play sort of centre back, that could play left back, and then they get their DM on Amadou Onana maybe, and then they get their striker, that could give them funds to go in and get a winger. And obviously there's been recent links to Callum Hudson-Odoi coming from Paul O'Keefe, who is a good source, and obviously he's having a very good season, which sort of brings us into a discussion about wingers. So I'm going to talk to you first, Sonny. Let me know your sort of explanations for these sort of winger options here for Tottenham out of realistic ones.
I mean, when it comes to, like, as we've been mentioning a striker, but the thing we've had this season is, and we all know how Ange's wingers sort of play. They like to, take the ball to the byline, to the edge, and then obviously the the fullbacks and the midfielders are in that middle sort of space. So that's why I am more keen to see Son sort of, on that wing, dribbling where he does best.
Yeah.
cutting in. But the thing is, Son's not going to last forever. He is getting on, and even this season, his form's either been electric or he's been, he's suffered in certain games. Where he hasn't been able to, get into the games, or he's played through the middle and he hasn't really got the physicality or hold up play to really play as a striker. But some of the names I've mentioned, I mean, some of these are a little bit unrealistic. I mean, I like the idea of Callum Hudson-Odoi, but I'm still thinking, obviously, English, homegrown. I'm not going to go more detail about that. We all know what that is by the stage of this video. But I think it does make sense. He has been good in patches for Forest this season, but is it the signing that we need, in the sense of, does it actually take us to the next level? Is it a player who, this was a player who, I remember when Bayern Munich were putting £40 million bids for him, and everyone was like, what is going on? And then, he never sort of really made it to that mark. He's still only like 23 years of age, which, feels like he's been around forever. But have we got another situation where like an English winger has been touted beyond belief, and he sort of has found his level now? Even and you'll know this well, Alice, the other winger, Anthony Elanga at Forest, from being at Manchester United, even he going there, I was like, is he the one that got away? But then again, I'm like, I'm not so sure. I think these are, it's hard to know with these players. But my other players that I thought about that we've been linked to is Johan Bakayoko from PSV. I feel like he's been very good this season, played well against Arsenal as well in the Champions League. So he's good for that level. Again, a lot of there's a big theme with the Eredivisie. So I just feel like he's put some good numbers up this year. And you've even mentioned there, good injury record. We need that. I mean, we were linked.
That's why I mentioned it.
We were linked with Pedro Neto a lot. And I get worried about his injury record. But even today, I feel like he's been linked with, City and Newcastle, I believe. So, more people circling around him again. And then Michael Edwards. Is that Michael Edwards? I've forgotten if that's his name. Michael Edwards.
Yeah, I think it's Michael Edwards.
Oh, Marcus Edwards, sorry. I'm forgetting Michael Edwards with the the CEO type person. But yeah. Marcus Edwards, sorry, was obviously, I should know this because he was at Tottenham. He's 25 now. He was really good against us in the Champions League last year for Sporting. And there's the thing I think we've got a buyback clause. I feel like we got a sell-on clause on him. And again, English, homegrown, might make sense. And he's a bit more of a traditional Ange winger. When we look at, say, and we were linked with him as well, Jota from Celtic, someone who's going to take the fullback on and really, stretch the play. And I feel like Bakayoko and Edwards and Callum Hudson-Odoi are those sort of pacey wingers who are going to do that. But it's still, I'm unsure. When we think about, we've got the Timo Werner, it's almost like, do we need someone a bit more solid in that position, in the sense of, we're used to Son. We're used to, we've got Brennan Johnson on the other side who is growing. Do we want another winger who is we're willing to be a bit patient with and to grow? We were linked with Antonio Nusa, as I mentioned. That fell through because of his medical history. It's a tricky one. If it was up to me, I'd probably go for Bakayoko because he's a bit younger, and I think he's got a lot of potential. Whereas Callum Hudson-Odoi, Edwards, I think the jury is still out on those two.
Yeah, I think I agree with pretty much everything you said. I think the big question for wingers is with Tottenham. Do they go for someone more experienced, Elise Neto, but you're looking at 60, 70 million, injury-prone record, a Cubo Rafinha, you're still looking at a good 50 million plus. I mean, Leao Kvaratskhelia isn't even realistic. They're looking at the 100 million range. It's like, if you want a ready-made winger, they're going to be expensive. So you almost have to go for someone young or take a sort of a risk on someone that's a little bit older and hope that they maybe develop into that player. Like Nico Williams has recorded 42 million release clause, which would be perfect, but then he wants 300 grand a week, and you sort of look at that and you're like, ooh. Somerville of Leeds, apparently Leeds want 50 million for him. Is he that good? Nusa again, is he ready-made product? Matoma's all right, but Brighton will want 50 million. It's so difficult. I think if Pedro Neto was going to be available for a reasonable price, I would take him at Tottenham, even with the injury risk, just because I think he is everything that Ange wants, and he's Premier League proven. His numbers are insane. His ability to just run the ball into space, get up the pitch, cross, get down the byline, attack his fullback. I think he's everything that Ange would want in a winger. But Pedro Neto, you can't spend more than 50 million on him with his injury record. And Wolves apparently want 70 million, which is ridiculous when he can't stay fit. And I think with Tottenham's problems of injuries, it's such a difficult one. Elise is my first choice at Manchester United, which we might get him, but who knows? I think he would be brilliant at Tottenham, but that's a 60 million release clause. If Tottenham sell well, they could have the money to do something like that. But I think a lot of people are going to be in for Elise. And as you mentioned earlier, you're sort of competing with Arsenal and Chelsea for the striker, and Tottenham are sort of in that position because they can't pay the wages the other clubs can pay, where they might just get the third choice after Arsenal, after Chelsea, potentially. I mean, I think some strikers would probably be clever to choose Tottenham over Chelsea right now. But sort of the winger situation, potentially you've got Newcastle, Liverpool, Manchester United all looking at right wingers potentially as well. Now, I've gone with a name that's a little bit random, a little bit rogue, but I've gone with Desiree Doue. Now, I wasn't super familiar with this guy until a couple of months ago when I was sort of reading about him, then gave him a watch. And it's someone that I do think maybe Tottenham needs someone that's probably ready now on the wing, because you've got to be a bit patient with some of your players on the wing, but he's one of those players that has Ballon d'Or potential. That's how I explain it. You've got young players that are great, and then you've got young players, like Endrick, Desiree Doue, Estavio, who Chelsea have just signed, that I think this is a Ballon d'Or potential player. This guy's playing in Europe, not South America, and actually getting minutes in Europe. And I think his ability to play left wing, right wing, attacking midfield, was believed to be an attacking midfielder, sort of turning into a left winger. It's got a lot of similarities to, I'd say, Foden at the moment in terms of what he could be, but becoming more of a winger. Got 10 goal contributions in 25 starts, turning 18 this season. Burst through opponents. He just uses his strength as well. For a guy that's so small, he uses his strength to hold off players. He runs, he's fast. He's got what it is to be a top player. And I think it would be difficult for Tottenham to attain him, but if he's available for 30 million, 35 billion, I think it's one where you look at and go, this could be a world beater if you can't afford to stretch for a Neto and Elise, because it's a risk, but I think he will be good, which sort of brings me into sort of my overall lineups for Tottenham, more realistic, less realistic, and then we'll dive into you. But do you have any comments to add on the winger situation before I dive into this?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is, especially with the winger position and a bit of the midfielder, is a lot of them have just question marks, and a couple more names have just come into my head. Like, we've been linked with Rafinha at Barcelona, but then you think, does that really fit Spurs? Is it attainable? And the thing is, with Barcelona's financial situation, they probably would sell, but again, lots of a big fee. You mentioned Elise there, which made me think of Eze has been linked with us a little bit, but again, are they going to sell two high-priced assets? Probably not. English can play on the wing. Morgan Gibbs-White comes back into contention, with that wing sort of chat as well. And another player who I mentioned him a little while ago, and I've sort of called off my interest in him for midfield, was Dewsbury Hall. I feel like, English had a really good season, put up some good numbers. That's the thing. We're basically up for the same players. And then finally for the wing, and this one is it just sums Spurs up. Like Nico Williams at Athletic Club Bilbao. Perfect. 50 million release clause. You think so much potential. But the thing is with Bilbao, for those who don't know, is because they only sign players from the Basque region, their transfer funds go like that and their player wages go like that. So he's on about £350,000 a week. So and bear in mind, like his brother Inaki Williams is basically a club legend. He's on about £400,000 to £500,000 a week. So the only way you try and persuade him is you say you you come into a bigger club, more potential maybe, and you just think maybe you have to really go in on the sell. But I think with a lot of these players as well that we've been mentioning is you've got to take into consideration where a Spurs sort of looking at the moment. I think you've made some really good suggestions, especially in Italy because of Fabio Paratici's little black book. He has got lots of contacts there, and we've actually surprisingly got a lot of success from Serie A. So it's going to be an interesting summer, as I keep saying. But I'm excited because I'm just so unsure, which sounds a bit weird, but I'd like to see what happens. It's not like a normal summer where we just get, I feel like these players that we're getting linked to, none of them I'm like, what? Or like questioning it at all.
Yeah.
There's more intrigue instead of like being put off by them or even like excitement. I'm just like, oh, this sounds like it's got potential.
I think Tottenham have done smarter business these last couple of years, gone for younger players. They're not going for those sort of older sort of players that are a little bit like they're looking for a more modern approach, and you can see that. So when Tottenham are linked to players, you go, well, I'm not super familiar with that player, but actually it ticks that box, that box, that box. You know, like Tottenham when they were linked to like Dragusin, I was like, well, I don't know loads about Dragusin. I do my research, and while we haven't seen him a lot, I'm like, you know what, this could be a very good deal. They were linked to Todibo, that would have been brilliant. I've been following Todibo a lot, and I think sort of Tottenham fans, I think it's hard to say this because Levy is very like, you don't know what Levy's going to do, and he can be a bit of a knob when it comes to the transfer window. But I do think that like
Really
Tottenham fans have reasons to be excited of sort of the names they're linked to. You know, I've got my less realistic and more realistic lineup here. Like less realistic would be Toney and Neto in attack, and then getting Onana and then Archie Gray to come in, who could also give fullback depth as well on the right, and then Calafiori, who's this, you know, brilliant young centre back that can play left back, that's playing brilliant stuff at the moment. One of the best up and coming players, obviously Italian links to Patrici there. I mean, that would be my less realistic sort of thing. That would be sort of 5 key signings there, which I don't see happening. More realistically, and I don't know if Doue is realistic because I think he will be snapped up by someone. But I've gone with him, but maybe they need a bit of a ready-made winger. Gimenez, it's a little bit more risky with the sort of youth in attack, which would worry me a bit in the sense of I feel like sometimes Tottenham just don't have that end product. Onana, I think, could work well. I weirdly think Onana, Bergvall, if he hits the ground running, and Maddison as a midfield three would have quite good balance. And then, as we spoke about, Gertrude, because he could just cover all bases on the back. But I don't want to drag this video on for super long. I want to dive into your lineup, and I want you to sort of explain it to me. And you can change some of it because obviously I did a little bit of this last minute. If you've got any last minute changes.
Yeah, I mean, the less realistic one are just some of the top names across Europe. I mean, Benjamin Sesko would be absolutely fantastic, but it's just not going to happen, sadly. It's just, even though, like, you mentioned it there, like, Bergvall we stole off of Barcelona, Dragusin, Bayern. So we are, like, sort of throwing our weight around at the moment. But I feel like when we look at the more realistic side on the right-hand side, that is a squad I look at and I think it's better depth. It's more well-rounded, and I think there's a lot of potential there to, you know, get that side actually ticking, playing Ange ball, and you know, really get it going. You know, I just feel like I feel sorry with Richarlison because he has had a good season, but he is injury prone as well. I think people forget that he is. You know, he's not going to the Copa America with Brazil because of that. He probably would have been well on the plane or whatever the saying is for them. I'm used to saying that with England, but yeah, I feel like with Richarlison, he can also play on the wing. We saw earlier in the season he played on the left against Liverpool, looked really good. So there is potential there to, you know, we don't necessarily have to sell him to really, you know, it depends if we can get money back. You know, one thing with Levy is he likes to not be mugged off. You know, he wants to get the right prices even when selling, and he don't just look for a good deal when he's buying. But you know, if we can, you know, the names in front of us right now, if we can secure a good couple of them. I mean, one thing we haven't mentioned, I'll say it quickly, is Fraser Forster's on the list of people who are going. Now, that's not me saying that, you know, Forster is a key sign, but yeah, another homegrown player, but also the problem is, and he didn't have to because Vicario had a good record, but when he did come in, and that was Fulham in the Cup, the level of playing out from the back goes down dramatically. And we're not really, you know, we've got 2 keepers in our setup at the moment who are 25 years old, not really pulling up any trees. So maybe a goalkeeper might be on the cards to come in, but not so sure about that. I feel like it will either be one of the other guys who are I say they're in the academy. You can't really say that when they're 25, but one of the other options we've got. And again, they're English as well, so it helps the homegrown.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you very much, Sonny, for coming on. I will link your channel down below, but just tell the viewers where they can find you and what kind of stuff you do over on your channel.
Yeah, so Sonny Talk Spurs on YouTube. Just type that into the search box or down in the link below. Just non-stop Tottenham content. Usually, you know, it's been game reactions, but now the season's come to an end. It's probably going to be a lot of transfer stuff, a lot of, you know, how Ange's team is going to line up in the new season, previewing the Europa League and all that sort of thing. So still a lot going on. So keep me on your radar.
Yeah, big up Sonny. Make sure you go check out his channel. He does loads of Spurs content over on there, whereas we don't do as much Spurs content on here, but we will be covering the transfers. Thanks everyone for watching today's video. It was a longer video. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of a longer format of a guest on, something different. Let me know your thoughts in the comment. Let me know who you'd sign in the comments. You could do a realistic lineup and a less realistic lineup if you want down below. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts. Please do hit the like button on the way out. Subscribe if you're new. Thank you for watching. Bye.